we welcome Amrita Sen. She is co-founder and director of research of Energy Aspects. So, Amrita, great to have you back with us. First of all, how much have we got left in the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? We've released a lot.
Oh, yeah, we have. I mean, right now, we're just above 400 million barrels. By the end of the year, just accounting for everything that's been announced, we will be below 380 million barrels. Now, the IEA at least mandates that countries should have, or OECD countries should have, 90 days of forward import cover. Because the US is now a very big exporter of products, even when you net all of that, you still need, or you should need, to hold about 220 million barrels. So, you know, there's about, you could argue, 150 million of buffer for the president to go. But the trick, or the issue over here is, if you remember back in 2017, there was a bunch of legislative releases that were agreed for the next 10 years. So between 2017 and 2027, every year, like the Bipartisan Act of 2018, for instance, there's a bunch of those acts that just releases crude from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to pay for infrastructure and different, other things. If you account for that, there's another 100 million barrels coming out just in the next 3 years. So that, very complicated, but effectively, I'm saying, that probably gives the president only about 60 million barrels to play with if he did want to do another emergency release.
Well, to play with, I thought that the Strategic Petroleum Reserve was actually for possible disruption in the supply of oil. That is, we're getting cut off, particularly in times of conflict or something. What you're talking about, funding infrastructure, or for that matter, just controlling the price, I never understood that was the purpose of the SPR.
You're right, that wasn't the purpose of the SPR, but like I'm using the word wasn't on purpose. I think it's been made very, very clear by the current administration that they are going to be managing the market, they're going to be managing prices, and they will be using the SPR to do so. So gone are the days when we use the SPR for an actual supply disruption. To be fair, they are preempting something and saying that with the the EU embargo on Russian oil coming in, potentially we could have a very big supply disruption. But regardless, they're saying we are going to be managing prices, which is why he's also then saying, I'm going to buy some Strategic Petroleum Reserve back, or crude for it back at $70. But yeah, this is absolutely managing prices rather than supply disruptions.
That sounds very robust. Does the United States have the power to do that? I mean, obviously the price of oil is under 100 now, but how much of that is because of releases from the SPR versus global economics and the slowdown in China and elsewhere?
A big part of it is the global recession and the slowdown in China. But I will say, if you think about it, since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we have actually had more oil come to the market than has been taken out, thanks to the SPR. The 180 million barrels that's coming out this year has actually made oil, at least the oil market, relatively well supplied on the commercial side, because we've simply moved oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserves to commercial tanks. The disruption to Russian oil hasn't hit yet. It will be hitting from December onwards. And that's when, arguably, if there isn't that much SPR to release, then, it won't really help in keeping prices down.
And finally, Amrita, this is all about oil. Let's turn over to natural gas, and particularly when it comes to Europe. What about that gas cap?
Again, very similar this side of the pond. You are seeing the European Commission very similarly push for potentially capping the natural gas prices here. Now, it's fraught with issues. For instance, again, there's a reason markets work. Same for oil, same for gas. If there's an imbalance in demand and supply, prices go up so that it can attract supply. That's precisely why LNG has been coming to Europe, to help balance the loss of Russian gas. If you set a cap that's too low, you're not going to get that LNG. You're not going to get the flow that you're getting between countries where there is a deficit versus a surplus. And I really do think, governments intervening both in oil markets in the US and in gas markets in Europe, it's extremely distortionary for markets, and it actually distorts price signals and price discovery, which is ultimately what is required to sort issues such as the massive energy crisis we are in. Otherwise, we simply won't be reducing demand, and supplies will continue to remain very, very low.
Amrita, if in fact the natural gas cap gets set too low and it diverts natural gas, where will it go? China, India, where does it go?
I mean, look, Again, the reason we are arguably at $90, like you mentioned as well, for oil, and similarly Europe being flooded with LNG, is in big part because China continues with its zero-COVID policy. We are expecting China to gradually ease its policy from April next year, not right now with the winter coming up, but once that does happen, the demand, the pent-up demand there is enormous. Pent-up demand in Asia overall is about 18 months lagging the West. And, I was just there recently, and you can see that. So China opening up will pull in an enormous amount of both oil and gas, which I just don't think Europe and the US is ready for.